Welcome. It's time to go to school on the Korg O3RW A12 synthesis module. During the past few years, Korg has taken over the position at the top with the introduction of the M1 Music Workstation, the T-Series workstations, the Wave Station, the O1W series of workstations, as well as Korg's complete line of professional effects processors. Now, with the introduction of the O3RW, the amazing sound quality and awesome power of the O1W series instruments are available at a fraction of the cost, while still delivering features such as 32-voice polyphony, 228 programs, 100 combinations, the ability to assign up to 8 separate sounds across the keyboard in splits and layers, 114 killer percussion sounds, 47 studio-quality effects that are dynamically controllable through MIDI, conformance to the general MIDI standard, and 16-part multi-timbral operation. Lance Abair has become well known to musicians across the entire United States, doing clinics and MIDI seminars for Korg USA. Lance's straight-ahead, non-technical explanations have helped countless musicians to get the most out of their MIDI equipment. Now, you have Lance in your own personal MIDI studio, ready to show you the ins and outs of your all-new Korg O3RW synthesis module. It's recommended that you have your O3RW hooked up and ready to go as Lance walks you through this fine musical instrument.
Hi, my name is Lance Abair, and I'd like to congratulate you on your purchase of a Korg O3RW synthesis module. The O3RW's lineage comes from the highly popular O1W series of music workstations and shares most of the O1W's features and sound quality. Throughout this video, I'll be referring to the O3RW as the O3R. I'd like to help you become acquainted with the O3R by walking you through the basics, covering the subjects that new owners want to know about as soon as they get their new instrument home. From my many experiences as a product specialist, I found that what most people want to know immediately is how to get around on the instrument, how to select sounds, how to utilize the O3R for sequencing purposes, how to set up combinations like keyboard splits and layers, how to get the most out of the powerful effects section, and how to have total control of the internal drum kits. I want to keep this video as down-to-earth as possible instead of being technical, more in the manner of a personal training session. So I'll deal with the material in sections so you can go back and work on it one part at a time. Also, if I start to go a little too fast, you can always pause, stop, and rewind to go back over the material. You can control your own pace. I'd also recommend that you have your new instrument plugged into the wall and running while you watch this video so that you can follow me as I go through all of the procedures. By the way, this tape was recorded in hi-fi audio format, so if you have a hi-fi capable VCR, you might want to hook it up into a stereo system to take full advantage of the sound. Now let's get going. When you open the box for your new instrument, you'll find that it contains your new O3RW, the power cord, the owner's manual, a quick guide booklet, and your Korg warranty registration card. Make sure that you fill out your registration card and send it to Korg immediately. This card not only establishes your warranty, but also gives Korg the ability to contact you with information on any future updates or products. The O3R can be hooked up a variety of ways. One way could be something as basic as your home stereo, hooked up running from the 1L and 2R outputs of the O3R into the left and right auxiliary inputs of your receiver, using a stereo cord like this, with 1/4-inch plugs on one end and RCA male connectors on the other end. You could just as easily use a couple of small speakers with built-in amplifiers. This type of speaker is available at very reasonable prices. Simply hook the left output of the instrument to the speaker on the left and the right output to the speaker on the right. You could also hook it up to a mixer, giving you more input channels, allowing you to use the additional 2 outputs of the O3R. The mixer could then be connected to a stereo amplifier running to 2 monitor speakers. There's also a headphone jack on the front panel. The O3R has a complete set of MIDI connections for any application, in, out, and through. If you're using the O3R in a live performance situation, connect the MIDI cable from the MIDI out of the keyboard to the MIDI in of the O3R. If you're using the O3R as a sequencing module, simply connect the MIDI cable coming from the MIDI out of the sequencer to the MIDI in of the O3R. Now for some instant gratification. There are 3 great demo sequences written by Stephen K. To hear them, press the Combi and Edit keys on the O3R's front panel at the same time. At this point, you'll see 6 blinking LEDs. To hear the first sequence, press the top left LED. To hear the second sequence, press the top middle LED. For the third, press the top right LED. If you want to stop the sequence at any point while it's playing, just press its button. If you press the bottom right key, all 3 sequences will play in order and continue to repeat until the key is pressed again. Now sit back and enjoy your demo sequences. Important, don't worry. People who are not used to newer technology sometimes worry that they might accidentally push a wrong key, which might cause their new instrument to be ruined. Yes, if you dropped a grand piano onto your O3R, you could cause some damage. But any slip of your finger during some procedure might goof up what you're trying to do, but will not damage the instrument. One thing you don't have to worry about with the O3R is losing your factory programs and combinations. Korg has seen to it that they are inside, able to be reloaded at any time. The procedure is simple, but before we go through it, I want to acquaint you with the fact that the small keys on the front panel of the O3R must be pressed firmly. With a light touch, the key might not always make a change. Now, on the front panel, press the global multi key. This key is a double function key in that it toggles back and forth between the global and multi modes. If the screen shows tune trans when you press the key, you're in global mode. If it shows a parameter from the multi mode, you can press the key once more to get into the global mode. Once you're in the correct mode, press the page plus key 5 times until the display is showing O5A card load. In the top right-hand corner, you see a blinking arrow pointing to the right. This is referring to the fact that there are more pages to move through, which can be accessed by pushing the right arrow key. Press the right arrow key 4 times so that you end up on page C, preset data load, with a blinking OK. To reload the factory preset data, press the +1 key at the top right. This button also serves as a yes key. Now it asks if you are sure. Press the yes key again, and the display will read completed, meaning the factory settings have been reloaded into your O3R. So you see, there's nothing to worry about. Now let's get busy learning how to get around on the O3R. The first thing you see on the O3R is its front panel. Let's take some time to acquaint you with how to get around on this instrument. At the top left is the master volume knob. It controls the overall volume of the O3R. Directly beneath the master volume knob is the stereo headphone jack. For the time being, press the program key. Now look to the right of the volume knob and notice the MIDI indicator display. Hit a note on your keyboard and notice that an LED lights up under the number 1. Now press the Combi key and strike the keyboard again. Since I have combination A00 MIDI piano selected, I see the first 3 LEDs light up. Here's what this means. In program mode, the first LED will light up to show that a signal is present. In combination mode, an LED will light up for every timbre that is in use. In the combination MIDI piano, there are 3 programs in use, so we see 3 LEDs. In multi-mode, each of the 16 LEDs corresponds to each of the 16 MIDI channels. Every time a signal is received on a MIDI channel, its LED will light up. Now let's move over to the mode select keys. Up and to the right of the display screen is the combi key. This key gives you the ability to access any one of 100 internal combinations, as well as up to 200 more if you're using a Korg SRC 512 RAM card. Combinations can have up to 8 keyboard splits and layers, making for some exciting and dramatic sounds. The next key is the program key, which accesses 228 internal programs and up to 200 more on an SRC 512 card. Below the combi key is the edit key. This key lets you access the powerful editing system of the O3R. If you're currently in combination mode and then press the edit key, you enter the edit combination mode. If you're currently in program mode and press the edit key, you'll enter the edit program mode. Now for the global multi key. This key toggles the O3R back and forth to give you access to the global mode and the multi-mode. The global mode is the main utility section of the O3R where you set MIDI parameters, work with drum kits, save to and load from memory cards, and perform MIDI data dumps. The multi-mode is a 16-channel multi-timbral setup for use with an external sequencer. Now let's go to the internal card page plus key by first pressing the program key. This is another key that serves two purposes. When in combination or program modes, it allows you to move between the internal and card memories. In combination or program edit modes, global mode or multi-mode, the page plus key acts as a page up key to move upward through the various editing pages. When the O3R has a program card inserted, there are additional banks of sounds available. An SRC 512 card can contain up to 2 banks of combinations and programs. The card banks would be called bank C and D. The bank key enables you to choose either of those 2 banks. In combination or program edit modes, global mode or multi-mode, the page minus key acts as a page down key to move backward through the various editing pages. Now let's go to the plus and minus 10 and arrow keys. The plus 10 and right arrow key. In combination and program modes, this key can be used to increase the number by 10. Since the display window of the O3R is small, all of the information on any given page is unable to be viewed at the same time. Because of this, it's necessary to move to the right to access more of a page's information. The right arrow key moves you to the right across a page. The minus 10 and left arrow key. This key works in the same manner as the plus 10 and right arrow key, except that it decreases combination and program numbers by 10, and in editing mode, moves you to the left across a page. The plus 1 up key and the minus 1 down key. These keys advance combination and program numbers up or down by 1 increment. In edit modes, the keys can be used to change number values up or down. When held down, the numbers change continuously until you let up on the key. Another function of this key is to answer yes or no to a question such as, "Are you sure?" In this instance, the plus 1 key would serve as a yes, and the minus 1 key would serve as a no. Korg is well known for maintaining an extensive library of sounds for its products. The sounds come in 2 forms: PCM card sets and program card sets. The PCM card sets come with 2 cards. One card contains the raw sampled multi-sounds, and the other contains the programming information to make the raw samples musically useful. Since the cards are labeled, slide the PCM card into the PCM data slot and the program card into the program data slot. The cards need to be pushed in firmly to assure a good internal connection. By the way, all of the PCM card sets for the O1W series of products will be converted into O3RW format. And now let's move to the power switch. What can be said about a power switch that hasn't already been said? Let's just say that it is this switch that makes it all possible. Now let's take a look at the rear panel. Facing the rear panel on the far right, you'll see 4 audio outputs. They're labeled 1L, 2R, 3, and 4. 1L and 2R usually act as the left and right stereo mix outputs. Outputs 3 and 4 are available for outputting specific sounds for external processing. Another use would be if you were to be playing live using a split keyboard setup with a bass sound in the left hand and a piano sound in the right. You could send the bass sound out of its own output to send it to a bass amp. Next to the audio outputs are the MIDI in, out, and through jacks. It's here that you connect MIDI cables leading to and from other MIDI devices. Finally comes a remote jack. This jack is where you would connect a very helpful device called the RE1 remote control. I'll show you the RE1 later on in this video. Now let's put all this new information to use, showing you how to really get around on the O3R. Let's start with an SRC 512 RAM memory card. Make sure the card is inserted face up into the program data card slot. Since the SRC 512 card can contain 2 banks, each with 100 programs and 100 combinations, it's possible to have access to 600 sounds with this card inserted. Now press the program key. If you want an internal program, press the internal card key until you see the letter A to the left of the program number in the display. For card programs, press the card key. The same holds true for combinations. Back to internal. Now let's go shopping for some sounds. With so many program sounds, there's a vertical numbering scheme that'll help you find your way around in Bank A of the internal factory sounds. Programs are arranged in a certain numerical order by types with regard to the second digit of the number. Dramatic synth sounds end with 0. Keyboard instruments like electric pianos, clavinets, organs, and so forth end with 1. Brass instruments end with the number 2. Woodwind instruments end with 3. Guitars end with the number 4. Struck percussion sounds end with 5. Basses end with the number 6. Strings end with 7. Flutes and some more synth sounds with the number 8. And finally, percussion and sound effects end with the number 9. Let's say that I wanted to hear some guitar sounds. We now know that they'll all end with the number 4, so I'll go through them one by one. 04 Rosewood guitar. Allen's Run, number 14. '24 Zing String. And so forth. While doing this tape, the first cards from the O3R library are not yet available, so I've saved the internal programs onto my SRC 512 RAM card so that I can show you how to use the card. Remember, a card can contain 2 banks of programs, combinations, and global data, including the effects assignments from the internal multi-setup. They're referred to as Bank C and D. Let's say that I want to select program 27 from Bank D of my card. I would first press the internal card key to access the card. The display would show either a C or D in the top left corner, corresponding to either C or D bank. Since I want Bank D, I'll press the bank key until I see a D appear in the display. Now to get program 27. Since I'm on program 24 at the moment, all I need to do is to press the +1 key 3 times to advance the program number to 27. It's that simple. To go to program number 12, I would press the -10 key once and the -1 key until I got down to the number 12. The procedure for moving through the combinations is identical. To choose combination setups, simply press the Combi key and you're ready to go. There's another bank of sounds in the O3R that's referred to as the General MIDI Bank. It's a fact that all manufacturers use different drum kit setups, different program numbering systems, and so forth. Because of the need for a uniform set of specifications that everyone could count on, the MIDI Manufacturers Association and the Japanese MIDI Standard Conference arrived at the general MIDI specifications. For example, press the bank key and the internal card key until you have the internal program showing. Now press the bank key and the letter to the left will read G for General MIDI. You're in the General MIDI program bank. Select program G13 Marimba. We're already there. Every manufacturer's typical sound list doesn't have a marimba sound on program number 13. The message here is that the General MIDI program number 13 on any other manufacturer's product that supports General MIDI will also be a marimba that sounds similar to this one. This also holds true with regard to the assignment of drum sounds to the keyboard. All manufacturers do not use the same keyboard assignments for drum sounds. That can cause problems if you sequence drum sounds on one manufacturer's product and try and play it back on another. You might find that the notes you played to get a kick drum on one keyboard will be playing back a triangle on another. General MIDI has arrived at a drum map for the keyboard that'll be predictable from manufacturer to manufacturer. A sequence done on one manufacturer's General MIDI product can be played back on another manufacturer's General MIDI product, and the same sounds will play back. There will be some differences because of different sampling and programming techniques, but they will come close enough to work. You can see all of the General MIDI program names and numbers on page 133 and the General MIDI drum list on page 134 of the O3R Owner's Manual. One more thing. In General MIDI, the drums are always on MIDI channel 10. Now let's move around some more. First, let's select program A17. Let's go into edit mode by pressing the edit key. Let's move through the pages of edit mode by pressing the page up key. Upon pressing the edit key, we see 00A oscillator mode with the word double beneath and a blinking arrow pointing toward the right. Here's what all of this means. 00 stands for page 00. The A stands for section A of page 00. Because of the small size of the display, the pages have to be broken down into sections, A, B, C, D, and so forth. The arrow to the right means that there's another section that can be accessed by pushing the right arrow key. Push it. Now we're on section B of page 00. You'll notice that the arrow is now pointing to the left, meaning that this is the last section of page 00. We can get back to 00A by pressing the left arrow key. Press it. Here we are again. The word double on the screen refers to the fact that two multi-sounds are assigned to this program. Since the word double is blinking, that means that we can change it to something else. To change it, use either the value +1 or -1 keys. Let's push the value minus, and the word will change to single. Push the plus key twice, and you'll have selected drum sounds. Now back to double. Now press the page plus key once to go to page 01A, where we will see the multi-sound selected for oscillator 1. Let me explain the term multi-sound. A multi-sound is the collection of samples that are assigned across the keyboard for a certain instrument. For instance, a piano multi-sound is made up of digital recordings called samples of many notes across the keyboard. Those samples are assigned to the keys on the keyboard so that when you play it, you hear the sound of a recorded piano playing. The multiple samples spread across the keyboard are called multi-sounds. There are 255 multi-sounds in the O3R. Since this program is a double oscillator program, there are therefore 2 multi-sounds present. When a multi-sound's number is blinking, you can change it to another multi-sound by using the +1 and -1 keys. By the way, when a program has 2 oscillators, it uses 2 notes of polyphony for each key played. Now back to page 01A. Oscillator 1's multi-sound is a violin multi-sample number 124. Page plus to see oscillator 2 sound, which is multi-sound 125, cello. Listen to what they sound like together. With the multi-sound number 125 blinking, use the -1 key to select multi-sound number 45, coda. I'll just hold the button in. This multi-sound changes the entire character of the program. Now back to 125 cello. A complete list of the O3R's 255 multi-sounds can be found on the back cover of the owner's manual. To audition them, call up a program that has a similar sound character, go into edit mode, and select different multi-sounds for the oscillators. Now back to our program. Since we now have oscillator 2 in the display with an arrow pointing to the right, let's hit the right arrow once. We now see a level of 70, which means the volume of oscillator 2. Since 70 is blinking, we can change it with the +1 and -1 keys. Let's change it to 95. Push and hold in the +1 key until you get close to 95, then tap the plus and minus keys to move right to the number. The next parameter in this section of the page O2 is the octave. Right arrow to the octave, and the value 16 foot starts blinking. We can now change this with the +1 and -1 keys. Listen as I play a note and raise it first to 8 foot, and then to 4 foot, and then back down to 16. Since the arrow is now pointing in both directions, we know that there is more to page O2, so let's right arrow again. Here are more parameters for envelope generator intensity and panning. Each oscillator can be panned separately. There's still more to page O2. Right arrow where we find interval, which I will change to show what it does. Up and down by half steps. Next is detune, which simply detunes oscillator 2 from oscillator 1. Still more to the right. Right arrow to see delay. You can delay the sound of oscillator 2 with this parameter. Listen to it the way it is now. Now I'll change it to +50. Hear the difference? Now back to the original setting of O1. Our arrow only points to the left, meaning we have reached the end of page 2. Let's go on to page 3 by pressing the page plus key. This page is for the pitch envelope generator. Page up and we see 4. The VDF page for oscillator 1. VDF refers to the variable digital filter. Page up to O5, the VDF page for oscillator 2. Paging up again, and we go to O6 and O7. The pages for VDF 1 and 2 velocity sensitivity and keyboard tracking. Pages 08 to 11 handle parameters for the VDA, the variable digital amplifier. Page 12 and 13 involve the parameters for pitch modulation. 14 controls filter modulation. 15 has parameters for using aftertouch to control pitch bend, filter cutoff, right arrow, filter modulation, amplitude, using the joystick down to control filter modulation, right arrow, and using the joystick to control pitch bend and filter cutoff. Page plus takes us to page 16 for the effects section. I'll talk about the effects section later on. The last page is 21A, the Program Write and Name page. To get out of edit mode, press the Program key, and you're out. I'm not going to cover synthesizer programming on this video, but I wanted to show you how to navigate between the pages and their sections and parameters. As for programming sounds, the O3R functions very much like an old analog synth. At this time, I'd advise you to go back into edit mode and just practice moving from page to page and section to section. Also, experiment with changing the parameters by using the value plus and minus keys. One thing, you needn't worry that changing these parameters will destroy the factory settings, since we haven't written our changes into memory. The global mode is the nerve center of the O3R. The settings in this mode affect the entire instrument. It's sort of the utility section. In the global mode, you can set the overall pitch of the instrument, the transposition, velocity and aftertouch curves, and MIDI settings, as well as handle memory functions such as memory card loading and saving. Transmission of MIDI data dumps are done from the global mode. Finally, the various drum kit setups are found in this section. Let's start from the beginning. First, select program number 01, Time Pad. Press the global multi key. If the display changes to a global function such as tune transpose, you're in the global mode. If it shows a multi-setting such as program numbers, you're in the multi-mode and must therefore press the global multi key again. The same key toggles back and forth between the two modes. On page 00A, we have two parameters. One for master tune and one for transposition. Tune allows you to adjust the tuning of the entire O3R up or down by 50 cents each way. With the tune value blinking, use the +1 or -1 keys to get the desired value. Listen as I tap a piano note and change the tuning. Now, arrow to the right and start the transposition blinking. Transposition is set by half steps, an octave up or down. Listen to the piano as I change the transposition. This can be very helpful if someone needs you to play a song in a key you're not comfortable with. Just transpose the O3R. Arrow to the right to page 00B for the velocity and aftertouch curves. Let's take a second to explain what this means. All manufacturers' keyboards transmit keyboard velocity and aftertouch differently. It's a great feature to be able to adjust your module so that it responds appropriately to incoming velocity and aftertouch data. For MIDI novices, let's explain velocity. First, listen as I play the current sound in the O3R. I'm using dynamics in my playing. The keyboard is taking note of how quickly or how hard I strike the keys, and is then transmitting that information along with the note numbers out of the MIDI out. Velocity means how quickly or how hard the note is struck. Aftertouch is different. It refers to pressure applied to a key after it's been struck. This is useful when bringing in vibrato. For example, press the program key, then the bank key to access general MIDI programs, and select G57 trumpet. Listen as I play the trumpet. Notice that when holding a note for a while, I press the key further down and bring in vibrato. This is great for phrasing purposes. Now I could go back to global, right arrow to the aftertouch adjustment, and set it to my preference. The same holds true for velocity. There are 8 velocity curves and 8 aftertouch curves to choose from. You can tailor the O3R to be compatible with whatever keyboard you're playing from. They're all different. A word of warning. You might be playing a keyboard that is not capable of transmitting aftertouch. This is true of some digital pianos on the market, as well as some lower-priced synthesizers. Aftertouch is a musically helpful feature. Page up for scale types. In this section, you can choose the basic temperament used by the O3R. Watch as I go through them. First is equal temperament. Next is equal temperament 2, which adds a little imperfection to the intonation of equal temperament. Next is pure major. Notice that a right arrow pops up in the display. Let's right arrow over and find that you can select the key of your pure major temperament. Arrow back to the left, and then change to pure minor. You can choose the key for this one also. Finally comes the user scale. Right arrow, and you can set each pitch a semitone up or down by sense. Use the right and left arrow keys to move through the pitches. Before we go on, reset the scale to equal temperament. Next page, O2A MIDI Global. Here is where you set the global MIDI channel of the O3R. Next to the MIDI channel is the parameter for note reception. If you have only one O3R, it should be set to all, meaning all incoming notes. If you had 2 O3Rs, you could set one to odd like this, and the other to even like this. This would give you 64 notes of polyphony. Now reset the note receive to all. Right arrow. MIDI filtering allows us to enable or disable the O3R to respond to incoming commands. Your choices, while I use the right arrow key, are program changes, aftertouch, control changes, and system exclusive messages. A special word about the program MIDI filtering. Highlight it again with a cursor and note that there are 4 choices. Disables the O3R from receiving program changes. Enable enables the O3R to respond to both program and combination program changes. PRG enables the O3R to respond to program changes, but not combination changes. Finally, NUM causes the O3R to disregard incoming bank change messages, such as those using controller number 32. This would be necessary when playing back general MIDI sequences. Next page, O3A and B. When program and combination memory protect is set to on, it's impossible to accidentally overwrite a program or combination internally or on a RAM memory card. Now right arrow to page memory O3C. Page memory is a great feature. During normal operation, when moving from one edit mode to another, you always find yourself at the first page of that mode. Then you have to page up to the desired page. When the page memory function is turned on, you can go back to a previous mode and discover that the last page you were working on in that other mode will appear so you don't have to page up to it every time you re-enter the mode. Check this out. Set page memory to on. Press the program key and then the edit key. Page plus to 10A, effect 1. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now press the global key. You're back at page memory. Press the program key and then the edit key. It stayed on page 10A. What a time saver when you're bouncing back and forth between modes. Now, back to global. Page up to 4A. The O3R can send its internal program, combination, multi-mode effect setting, drum kit setups, and global data to any device that's capable of receiving it and storing it onto a disk. Such devices are called data filers. computers can also perform this function. Korg workstations such as the T-Series and O1 series can also act as data filers. You must first page back to your MIDI filter page, O2C, and select and enable System Exclusive so that it can be sent out and received through MIDI. So we'll go back to 2, C, System Exclusive, enable it. Now back to 4A. You can select a specific group of data by using the +1 or -1 key, or you could choose to transmit all of the internal data. When your choice is showing in the display, right arrow to the word OK to make it blink. With the external data filer properly prepared, press the +1 key. The word processing will appear while the process is taking place. When it's finished, the word completed will appear. There it is. Save the new data file onto a disk, and that's all there is to it. Now page up to 5A. Card load, save, and preset data. I'm holding in my hand a handy little item known as an SRC 512 memory card. This bad boy can contain 2 additional banks of O3R programs, combinations, drum kits, global, and multi-mode effect setup data. These cards come in handy when you're swapping programs with other O3R owners or when you want to have more O3R setup data available quickly. I always like to carry one with me when I go to product meetings, in case someone has some great sounds they want to swap. Let me show you the procedure involved with using the card. First, the card comes with a battery. Turn the card over and pull the battery holder from the top. Now lay the battery with the plus facing down into the holder. Slide the holder back into the top of the card. Now, slide the card face up firmly into the program data slot. Tap right arrow until you get to O5B, Save Card. By the way, the card automatically formats during this operation. Important, a card has 2 banks, bank C and D. You must choose which bank you want to save your O3R's data to. Let's choose D with the +1 key. It's already there. Now, right arrow to the OK so that it blinks. Now press the +1 key. The display asks, are you sure? We are sure, so press 1 again. The display screen will say completed, and you will have stored your entire O3R onto bank D of your card. Now pull your card out of the slot, and notice at the top left, there's a write protect switch. Set the switch to on. Now you can't accidentally erase the memory in your card. As new banks of sounds are made available from Korg and third-party developers, you could transfer their sounds onto an SRC 512 card so that you could have a total of 428 programs and 300 combinations available instantly. That's a lot of power. To load from a card, left arrow back to O5A, card load. Choose the bank you want to load and press OK. Answer the "Are you sure?" with a +1, which also means yes, and the load is complete. Pretty fast. Now let's talk about drum kits. Page up to O6A. The drum kit department of the O3R is incredibly powerful. Here are the basics. A drum kit can have 60 drums assigned across the keyboard. Each sound with its own individual tuning, volume level, decay time, panning to the effects section, and assignment to exclusive groups. I'll explain this as I go along. There are 2 custom drum kits in Bank A of the O3R. There's also a kit used in the general MIDI programs on G129 GM drum kit. There are also 4 drum kits in ROM. You can copy any of the ROM drum kits to a RAM drum kit location in Bank A so that you can perform edits. This will erase the original RAM drum kit, but it can be recreated by using the preset data load. A drum program can use either of the custom kits in Bank A or one of the 4 ROM drum kits. Let me show you what I mean. Press the program key and select the A bank with the bank key. Now choose program A09, producer kit. This is a kit that just gives you lots of kicks, snares, toms, and cymbals across the keyboard. Listen as I go through it. Notice that the drum sounds are panned in stereo. Each drum sound in each kit is pannable. Now let's take a look at the kit in edit mode. First, press the edit key. Now press the page plus key once, and the display tells us that drum kit 2 is occupying this program. To check out drum kit 2, press the global key. Page up to page 7A for drum kit 2. In the top right-hand corner of the display is the index number of the first sound used in the kit, index 00. The first sound or index number in drum kit 2 is drum sample 000 fat kick. We could move through the 60 index numbers and see what drum sounds are assigned by using the plus key. Now bring it back to index 00. We could also assign any other of the 114 sounds to this or any other index number by right arrowing so that the drum sound number is blinking. Now we can change it by using the plus or minus keys. Listen as I tap C2 and change sounds. By the way, all of the individual sample drum sounds, names, and numbers can be found on page 132 in the owner's manual. Right arrow again, and we're on page 7B, where we see that this drum sound, fat kick, is assigned to C2 on the keyboard. Next to the instrument key is the tuning. Right arrow to make it blink here. While striking C2, use the value plus and minus keys to adjust the tuning of this kick drum. Back to 0. That's a lot of tuning range. Right arrow again to the level parameter. Adjust it the same way up and down. Right arrow again to 07C, decay and pan. In this section, you can adjust the decay time of the drum sound. Let me show you by arrowing back to the left until we reach 07A again. And get the index 00 blinking again. Now let's move through the drum kit until we reach index number 42, sample number 29 crash cymbal. Okay, I can just hold my button in here. Right arrow to 7B, and we see that this crash falls on key F#5. Let's play F#5, that's it. Okay, now right arrow to 7C and decay, which is showing -20. hold down the -1 key and shorten the decay to -52. We have simulated what happens when a drummer crashes a cymbal and immediately stops it with his other hand. A choked crash. Your crash cymbal can ring as long as you want it to. You could also shorten the decay of a tom. Now readjust the decay to -20 and right arrow to the pan parameter. -20, pan parameter. Listen as I hit the crash and move the pan between A and B. The normal rule of thumb for a drum kit is to pan the drum kit sounds so that they fit their positioning in the drum kit itself. Kicks and snares are usually in the center. Cymbals are spread out from right to left. The hi-hat is over to the side, and so forth. The only decision at this point would be whether you were to pan the instruments from the drummer's or the audience's perspective. Finally, right arrow to O7D, exclusive group assign. This is a great feature which has 3 basic uses. One use allows you to assign 2 or more sounds to an exclusive group with only one able to sound at a time. Hitting any other sound assigned to that exclusive group would shut off the one currently sounding. The common use for this would be for hi-hats. The closed hi-hat on C5 could stop the open one on D5. The pedal closed hi-hat on D-sharp 5 could also stop the open hi-hat on D5 if it were assigned to the same exclusive group. The roll snare 1 on D-sharp 4 could be stopped by the roll snare 2 on E4. Now, here's the good news. There are 9 exclusive groups to assign sounds to in each drum kit. In some drum kits, the open and muted triangle are assigned to one of the exclusive groups. O7D is where the assignment is made. Right now on this crash, there is no assignment. Using the +1 key, move through the exclusive groups until you get to SLF, which stands for self. This means that the sound can cut itself off if it is struck again while still sounding. Listen. You hear it clipping itself off? Now change back through the exclusive group numbers until you come to the broken line. This means that the sound is polyphonic, meaning that it can play along with itself. This is useful in doing cymbal and snare drum rolls. Listen. You wouldn't want the crash to clip itself off while rolling. Go back to the program key and then the edit key. Notice the name of the drum kit assigned, 001 drum kit 2. Now press -1. This is the other drum kit position in the A bank. Press +1 twice and you bring up 002 ROM kit number 1. Press 1 again and you see 003 ROM drum kit 2, and so forth through ROM drum kit 4. You cannot go in and edit the ROM drum kits like we did with drum kit 2. However, if you'd like to get your hands on ROM drum kit 2 for editing purposes, you could copy it to either bank A drum kit 1 or 2 and edit to your heart's desire. You could then save the bank with its newly edited drum kit to an SRC 512 card for later use. The card's starting to get more interesting, isn't it? To copy the settings from ROM drum kit 2 into drum kit 1, go back to Global, page up to 08A, and change the first blinking parameter from A1 to ROM2. Right arrow to the second A1 and change it to A2. Right arrow to the OK and press +1, which means yes. When asked, "Are you sure?" say yes again. It's done. Now to edit this kit, you would go to O7A drum kit 2 and start making adjustments. Remember, you can make all the changes you want and still be able to get your O3R back to the way it came out of the box simply by performing a factory reset, as I demonstrated in Section 2, Topic 4. Now, pause the tape and start messing with the drum kit. There are two multi-timbral ways to use the O3R with an external sequencer. One way is by using combinations with each of the 8 timbres assigned to 8 MIDI channels. The other way is by using the multi-mode, which gives you the ability to have 16 timbres on 16 MIDI channels. I'll cover the multi-mode first. To access the multi-mode section, press the global multi key until you see the parameters for the multi-mode. The first parameters are found on pages 00A through D and are for selecting programs on timbres 1 through 16. You see the first 4 timbres in 00A. Use the right arrow to move to all 16. They're all assigned General MIDI program numbers. Left arrow back to timbre 10. You'll notice that it has 129 assigned to it. 129 is the program number for the General MIDI drum set. Timbre 10 has the MIDI channel 10, which is the General MIDI specification for drums. All of the other timbres have the same MIDI channel number as the timbre. Timbre 1 is MIDI channel 1, timbre 2 is MIDI channel 2, and so forth. The MIDI channels for the timbres in the O3R multi-mode cannot be changed. 16 timbres, 16 MIDI channels. For this reason, it is impossible to use an O3R combination in the multi-mode. While we're in this section, let's talk about internal, General MIDI, and card banks. You can select the program number for each timbre with the plus and minus keys. To jump back and forth between Bank A programs and General MIDI programs, use the bank key like this. You'll notice that the bank key doesn't cycle through the card sounds. You can't assign a card program to an internal combination or multi-mode setup. If you wanted to use a card program in an internal combination or multi-mode setup, you could write the card program to an internal program number to make it available. Here's how to do it. I have an SRC 512 card in the program slot. I'll press the program key, then press the card key. Let's say that the card program I want is number 44. I select card program 44. And press the edit key. Page up to 21A. And see the card program number blinking in the display. I then change to an internal program number that I don't mind writing over, such as A99. Oh. Then right arrow to the OK, and press the +1 key once, and then again, when prompted with "Are you sure?" My program is now available internally for use in a combination or a multi-setup. If this program were to be found on the program card of a 2-card PCM set, I would still have to have the PCM card inserted into its slot so as to be able to access the PCM multi-sounds from the card. By the way, while we're on program numbers, I need to acquaint you with a relatively new control number that will make your life a lot easier. Control number 32, bank change. The O3R has 100 programs in Bank A and 128 programs in the General MIDI bank. That's 228 programs. There are only 128 MIDI program change numbers. Control number 32 will take care of this problem. With more and more products coming out with more than 128 program positions, a bank system is being used. Bank A is considered to be Bank 1, and the General MIDI bank is considered to be Bank 2. To call up a sound on Bank 1 in a sequence, you would first insert a control number 32 with a value of 0 to access Bank 1, and then follow it with the desired program change from that bank. To call up a sound on bank 2, you would first insert a controller number 32 with a value of 1 for bank 2, and then a program change from 1 to 129 for the desired program. Ideally, these messages should not be on the same sequencer clock. Control number 32 is a valuable tool for getting around on instruments with a lot of programs. Page up to O1A, where you can set levels for each timbre. Actually, I would advise you to use control number 7 for MIDI volume and insert your initial levels into the sequencer at the beginning of each sequence. The O3R will respond to controller number 7 on individual MIDI channels. A word of advice. Whenever I do a sequence, I leave a measure at the beginning available for bank and program changes, as well as controller numbers for volume and panning. This way, your sequence is set up before it starts. Before we go to the next page, let me point out to you that there is a section from page 108 to 110 that shows you all of the pages in the multi-mode at a glance. It's very helpful. Now page up to O2A for panning. The audio output of each timbre can be panned to the audio inputs of the effects processing area of the O3R. This panning can be done by highlighting the timbre desired and using the +1 and minus keys to select the setting. The effects inputs range from A to B, C, C+D, D, all, or program. When all is selected, a timbre's output is sent to all effects processor inputs. When program is selected, the internal panning of the program will be selected. Remember, individual oscillators in programs can be panned. Note, when using a drum kit program, it's usually a good idea to choose program panning so that you can hear the stereo panning of the individual drum sounds. Important, the MIDI control number for panning is number 10. It'll allow you to pan a sound to between effects inputs A and B. I'll go over some special panning tricks in the effects section. Page up to O3A, timbre transpose. Each timbre can be transposed 2 octaves in either direction by half steps. When power is turned on, the O3R defaults to a setting of 0, 0. This is not a particularly critical parameter since you can transpose tracks in most sequencers. Page up to 4A, timbre detune. Each timbre can be detuned up or down by 50 cents. This can be handy if you want the same program on 2 different MIDI channels playing the same notes. Detuning tends to fatten up the sound. Page up to O5A. Pitch bend range. This parameter enables you to adjust how much an individual timbre will respond to a pitch bend wheel. Usually 2 half steps are enough, but you could go up to an octave either way. Next page for the MIDI program change filter. Here you can enable or disable a certain timbre to receive and respond to program changes. Page up to the first effects page. I'll deal with effects in their own section, but there's one thing you should know. Your multi-mode effects settings are left in the O3R even when the power is turned off. Another thing, the effects setting of the multi-mode can be sent out as a sysx data dump in the global mode. It could be sent back into the O3R during the first measure setting up the sequence. Also, I'd recommend a great shortcut to get a good, quick effects setting for general sequencing. Our trick is found on page 11C. Now we're at the copy effects page. I found that drum kits tend to have good all-around effects settings for sequencing, so I'd like to copy the effects from program A09, Producer's Kit. On page 11C, my choices are Program, Combi, or Multi. I'll go back and select Program. Right arrow to the program number and select A09. Now right arrow to the letters OK and press the 1 key. Answer yes with the +1 key. Now listen to the effects. Page down and notice that there's an exciter on effect 2 and a hall reverb on effect 1. Effect copy is a time saver. By the way, this multi-mode effect setup will stay in memory even when the power is shut off. Very important. When dumping the multi-setup, only the effect settings are transmitted. This is not a problem since you can use bank changes, program changes, and control changes for volume and panning during the first measure to set up the multi-setup. Now, press the combi key. The other way to use the O3R multi-timbrely is in combination mode. Bearing in mind that a combination can have 8 timbres instead of the 16 in the multi-mode, the combination mode has some other benefits. First, there are 100 combinations in Bank A and only one multi-mode setup. Each combination could be a song setup with its own separate effect settings. Let's go through the procedure of setting up a multi-timbral combination. Select A00 MIDI piano. Press the Edit key. Go through and make sure that every timbre is on and that it has a program number showing. The program number is not important since you would choose it during the startup measure of the sequence. Now page up to 00B for timbre levels. You can leave this alone since you can adjust it when sequencing with controller number 7. Next page, O2A for MIDI channels. I'd advise you to start your channels on any other number than 1, since number 1 is the global MIDI channel. At the beginning of the sequence, during the first setup measure, you will instruct the O3R with a program change on MIDI channel 1 to select a specific combination song setup. You can either have the combination with the beginning programs, levels, pannings, and so forth already written into memory, or you can call them up following the combination selection. Let's set the MIDI channels for the 8 timbres. Timbre 1, MIDI channel 2. Timbre 2, MIDI channel 3. Timbre 3, MIDI channel 4. And so on for all 8 timbres. Page up to the key window top page. They should all read G9. Continue right arrows to key window bottom and make sure that they are all set to C-1. They are. Next page. Velocity windows top should all be set to 127. Right arrow over and check them all. They're fine. Now keep going to the right and make sure that velocity window bottoms are set to 001. They're fine also. Page up. Transposition page. Set all timbres to 00. If you need something transposed in a sequence, you can do it with your sequencer. Continue to the right and make sure that the timbre detunes are set to 00. Next page. Program change, enable, or disable. Set all timbres so that they are able to receive program changes. Choose E for enable. Right arrow and make sure that the damper pedal is enabled on all timbres. It is. Right arrow to enable aftertouch. It's already enabled. Right arrow to control changes. They should be enabled for things like MIDI volume and pan changes. They're already enabled, and we see that the arrow is now pointing to the left, which means we have come to the end of page 6. Page up. This is the page for pan pots. For the time being, set them all to 5-5, meaning dead center between A and B. Okay, back to 5-5. Right there. Now page up, and we find ourselves in the effects parameters. For the time being, let's use our little shortcut and copy the effects from program A09. Page up to 12A, for effects placement and right arrow until the display reads Copy Effects. Choose Program A09, right arrow to OK, and press 1. The screen changes to Are You Sure with another OK, so press 1 again. Now we're set up with effects. Page up once more to 13A, the combination right page. We need to give this combination a name, so right arrow to 13B, the rename page. You see the original name of the combination, MIDI piano, with a blinking rectangle over the M in MIDI. This rectangle is called a cursor. The character which has the cursor over it is able to be changed to another character. We'll call this blank combination multi. Now, with the cursor over the first letter, use the +1 and minus keys to bring up the desired letters while using the right arrow key to move from left to right. M, U, L, T, I, coming up here. When you get to a character where you want a space, hold down the -1 key until the spot is empty. Okay, we'll do that to all these. We'll clean out the very end of this name. Exciting, huh? Now left arrow to get back to the right page. With the OK blinking, say yes, and then with the Are You Sure prompt, say yes again. The screen will say completed, and we can now press the Combi key to see our new multi-timbral combination. If you plan on using this combination as a template, leave this one alone and copy it to another combination number back on page 13A when you need another one. That's all there is to it. Remember, an SRC 512 card has room for 200 additional combinations just like this one. Now let's move on to editing combinations. Combinations come in many varieties. There are simple layers such as piano and strings, combination 20. There are also simple split keyboard setups like a bass in the left hand and a piano in the right, combination 10. Notice that the damper pedal only affects the piano and not the bass. There are velocity switching combinations such as number 12, express bass, press the edit button and look at all the programs in this combination. 6 programs. These are all bass sounds that are heard depending on how strongly you strike the key. In other words, what keyboard velocity you use. Some mellower bass sounds are heard when you strike a key softly, and then they are replaced or added to by more aggressive sounds when you play the keyboard with more velocity. There are also even more complex combinations that include splits, layers, and velocity switching, such as number 51, orchestra switch. Listen to a tune I wrote using this combination. I'll start out playing it softly and then bring up the velocity, adding new and more aggressive sounding instruments. Now let's go to work and find out how to make our own custom combinations. Move to combination A01. We're going to take combination 01 and change it to a combination which would be musically useful in a typical live playing situation. I'd like to have a bass sound in the left hand with a piano and strings layered in the right hand. I'd also like the bass sound to do a little velocity switching so that it gets more aggressive sounding if I hit the keys harder. In creating this combination, I'll be able to show you how to make all of the combination types. Press the Edit key and right arrow several times, and we'll notice that all 8 timbres have a program assigned to them. Starting backwards from timbre 8, let's turn the timbres off. Here's a time saver. When you encounter a general MIDI program, such as we have here on timbre 8, you can hit the bank key to switch it back to bank A so that you don't have to wait to cycle through as many programs. Bring it down to 0. Now, pause the tape and go back through the remaining 7 timbres, turning them off. When you're finished, I'll be waiting for you. Now let's put a fretless bass, G36, on timbre 1. You'll notice that the sound is not heard across the whole keyboard or at all velocities. So we'll page up to O3 and make some adjustments. For the time being, set all the key window tops to G9 and the bottoms to C-1. Pause the tape now and reset all your key window tops and bottoms. Now page up to the velocity window tops and bottoms. We'll set the tops to 127 and the bottoms to 001. Pause the tape and do this. Now we should be able to hear our fretless bass across the entire keyboard. Now, since a bass typically goes down to a low E string, let's set its transposition so that low E falls close to the bottom of the keyboard. Right now it's too low. Page up to O5A, the transposition page. Just what I thought, a big minus number. Let's try -12. Just right. Now back to page 00A and select a second, more aggressive bass program for the second timbre. Let's choose a slap bass, G37. G37. Now let's adjust their levels so that you get just a little of the slap bass. Page up to the level page, O1A, and set timbre 1 to 127. And timbre 2 to 90. Now let's move over to the velocity window page, O4C, and set the bottom velocity for timbre 2, the slap bass, to 105. Going. This means that any keyboard velocity below 105 will not cause the slap bass program to be heard. I'll have to really hit the keyboard hard to hear it. This will be good when I want to musically punctuate a part. Now, page back to the key window page and set the key window top for both basses to C4. C, 4. Now the basses end at C4. Now page back to 00A and assign the piano G01 to timbre 3. It sounds like it's transposed too high on the keyboard. Page up to the transpose page, O5A. Move to timbre 3 for the piano and set the transposition to 00. Let's say here. That's still a little too high. Move it down to -12. That'll work well for rhythm parts. Now move back to the level page and set timbre 3 to 127. Now let's separate the piano from the bass on the key window bottom page, O3B. We'll bring the piano down to a half step above the top last note on the bass. Set timbre 3 key window bottom to C-sharp 4. C-sharp 4. That'll work fine. Now let's get our strings. Page back to 00A and timbre 4. We'll use A07, the strings. They're too low also. Page up to the transposition page and move the strings up 1 octave. Now back to the level page, O1A, and set timbre 4 to 50 for a better blend. Let's pull the string sound out of the bottom of the keyboard by paging up to the key window bottom page and setting it to C-sharp 4, just like the piano. Window. Now we have another choice to make. Do we want the damper pedal to sustain the bass along with the piano and strings? I don't think so. We want the damper pedal to sustain the piano and strings and not affect the bass so that it can phrase itself separately. Page up to O6A and right arrow until you reach O6B for the damper pedal page. Damper pedal. The E's in the display stand for the word enable. Since we don't want the bass timbres 1 and 2 to respond to the damper pedal, we'll change the E's to D's for disable. Now let me demonstrate. Another thing. What about volume control? Wouldn't it be good if we were able to be playing the piano and use a pedal to raise and lower the volume of the strings while leaving everything else alone? If you're using a keyboard such as a Korg M1, a T-Series keyboard, or an O1W series keyboard that has MIDI keyboard controller functions, you can use a continuous controller pedal such as this Korg EXP2 to send volume messages to modules such as the O3R. Now let's set it up. Arrow to the right to reach O6D, the control change page. Disable timbres 1, 2, and 3 so that the MIDI controller pedal won't affect the volume of the basses or piano. Watch what I can do now. Now let's work on our effects a little. Give this combination a name and write it into memory. Page up to 8A. Let's do our little effects trick again. Page up to 12A and right arrow to 12C. Copy the effects from our old friend program 09 and listen to our combination. I think it needs a little more reverb. Page back to 8A. For effect 1, the hall reverb. Right arrow to 8B and change the dry effect balance to 7327. Now play. I like that a little better. While we're at it, how would you like it if the basses had no reverb, but the piano and strings did? We can do that also. For reasons I'll explain in the section dealing with effects, page back to the pan pot page, 07A, and pan the basses to C plus D. Okay, C plus D. C plus D. Also set the timbre 3 pan pot to 9-1. And the timbre 4 pan pot to 1-9. This will put the piano on one side and the strings on the other. Now that we pulled the diluting effect of the reverb away from the bass, it's too loud. Page back to the level page, 01A, and lower timbre 1 to 90 and timbre 2 to 70. Okay, pull this one down to 90. Timbre 2 to 70. Now page up to 13A and right arrow to the rename page. We'll call this combination BS, PNO, STR. With 10 characters to use, we'll have to employ some abbreviations. I'll let you see me do the BS and the first slash. B, S, and the slash is just below the numbers. Now, pause the tape and enter the rest of the name. When you've finished, start the VCR and we'll write our new combination into memory. Now that we have the name entered, left arrow to combination right. We'll write this combination to its original place, A01. The OK is blinking, so say yes by pressing the +1 key. The display asks, "Are you sure?" So say yes again. The display now reads completed, meaning it worked. Now press the combi key to see your new combination, bass, piano, and strings. Now think about something. With an SRC 512 RAM memory card, you could have an additional 2 banks of room for another 200 programs, 200 combinations, 4 drum kits, and 2 multi-mode effect setups. Now let's move on to learn about effects in the O3R. Korg instruments are known for having the highest quality effects processors. I could use a full videotape just to explain the O3R effects section, but due to time considerations, I'll just touch on some of the basics that you should be aware of. The 47 effects in the O3R are dynamically controllable through MIDI. This means that you can alter the effects using MIDI controllers such as aftertouch, velocity, moving the joystick, pushing a pedal, and so forth. I'll give you a couple of examples to whet your appetite. Select program A21, Perk Organ. Press the Edit key. Page up to 10A, Effect 1. It's currently showing Chorus 1 for Effect 1. Change from Chorus 1 to number 34, Rotary Speaker. Now, right arrow to the Dynamic Source page. In this section, we can choose what MIDI control can change this effect. Look at my options. Use the minus key to go to the first option. None. Next is the joystick plus Y, pushing the joystick forward. Joystick minus Y, pulling it toward you. Aftertouch, pedal 1, pedal 2, or the amplifier envelope generator. Set the source to aftertouch by using the -1 key. Right arrow to the intensity parameter and set it to 15. Now, page up to the effect parameter page, 11A, and leave the vibrato depth at 2 and right arrow to acceleration. The acceleration parameter adjusts the amount of time it takes for the rotary speaker to speed up or slow down. 12 is a good value. Right arrow again, and we come to the parameters for the slow speed and the fast speed. We'll leave them alone. Now let's play some notes and use aftertouch to speed up the rotary speaker. It worked. Now, if you like this change, you can page up to the right page and go through the procedure just like we have before. I won't write it now, and will instead go on to another example of dynamic MIDI control. Let's choose General MIDI Program 129. Go to the end of this one. Moving right along. There it is. Find a good sounding snare drum and tap it. While tapping it, take the joystick or your modulation wheel and push it forward. Listen as the reverb gets louder. When I release the stick, the reverb goes back to normal. Dynamic modulation of effects through MIDI is a very powerful tool. Now let's talk about choosing more effects. To choose an effect, you must be in Edit mode and page up to the effects pages starting on page 10A. On the page for choosing Effect 1's effect, you simply change the blinking number to the number and name of your choice. For Effect 1, change to Effect 13, Stereo Delay. Now play your snare drum and listen. Page up once and you see the parameters for the stereo delay. The first is the delay time left. Set it to 300. There you go. Right arrow to the next parameter, the delay time right. Set it to 500. Okay. Now play the snare and hear the difference. Right arrow again. FB stands for feedback. Feedback has to do with the number of echo repeats. Set the feedback to -70. We now have more repeats. Right arrow to high frequency damping. This has to do with the amount of high frequencies found in the echoes. Right arrow, and we come to the low and high EQ. This is just a fancy way of saying bass and treble. There's no way I have time on this tape to go through each effect, but I did want to go through one and show you the general procedure for editing them. I also want to point out that each effect has a full complement of professional editing parameters. The effects power of the O3R is greater than that found in modules costing twice as much. Don't be afraid of effects. They have the ability to help make your music sound even more special. By the way, there's a section of the owner's manual from pages 38 to 67 that lists all of the effects in the O3R with descriptions of what they do and what their parameters are. Now let's tackle the most misunderstood area of the O3R's effects section, effects placement. It's imperative that you understand effects placement so that you can get the full potential out of your O3R effects section. First of all, it's important to understand that when you pan a timbre in a combination or multi-mode setup, you're not sending it to an output. You're actually sending it to an input or inputs of the effects processing section. The effects section consists of 2 effects processors, which can be accessed through 4 inputs, A, B, C, and D. This is tricky, and I'd point you to pages 34 and 35 in your owner's manual for more assistance. There are 3 basic effects placements you should understand: serial, parallel, and parallel 2. Since you have a great diagram of each placement on pages 34 and 35, you should have your manual open to these pages while we go through this. Let's look at serial first at the bottom of page 34. If you pan a track anywhere between inputs A and B in serial mode, that sound will go through effect 1, and then effect 2, and finally go out of outputs 1 and 2. There are 11 panning degrees left to right between inputs A and B. If you pan a track to input C in serial mode, that sound then goes through output 3 pan pot, which can then be routed back to A and B to be processed through effect 2, and then is sent to outputs 1 and 2 as well as still going out of output 3. If output 3 pan pot were turned off, any track assigned to C would instead be sent only to output 3 with no effect. The same holds true for input D and output 4 pan pot. There. Is that enough to burn out your brain cells? A lot of people don't take the time to learn about this extraordinary routing power. This is the effects placement that is used for program A09 Producer Kit. What's great about this effects setup is that effect 1 is a hall reverb and effect 2 is an exciter. Select A09 Producer Kit, change to A10, and then back to A09 to reset the program settings. Now press Edit. Page up to Effect 1 page 10A. There's your hall reverb. Page up to 12A, Effect 2. There's your exciter. Page up to 14A to check the placement. It says serial. Right arrow, and we see that pan pot 3 is set to left and pan pot 4 is set to right. Remember when I panned the bass programs in our bass piano strings combination? I panned them to C plus D to bypass the hall reverb, but still pick up the exciter on effect 2. Now let's go one step further. To prepare for this, go to the global page and do a factory reset by paging up to O5A, and right arrowing to O5C. Press 1 twice to reload the factory settings. Now press the program key and select A09. Press the edit key and go to page 00A where we see the word drums. Page up and we see that drum kit 2 is being used. Let's go into the drum kit by pressing the global key. Page up to 7A, drum kit 2. Play the lowest C and listen to the kick drum. It has reverb on it. In serial mode, if I pan this kick to C plus D, it would miss the reverb and only pick up the exciter. Any drums panned to between A and B will still have reverb, and any drums panned to between C and D will be dry. Select index 00, right arrow to the pan pot, and set it to C plus D, and play the kick. The reverb is gone. With serial effects placement, you can have some sounds dry and some wet. For those of you who are not interested in going this deeply into the effects section, I would advise you to stick with serial placement for sequencing and to copy the effects setup from one of the drum programs to use in your song setups. Now, on to parallel effects placement. Look at the diagram of parallel placement at the top of page 35. In parallel effects placement, effect 1 is placed after inputs A and B, and effect 2 is placed after inputs C and D. Any sound pan to A and B will only pick up effect 1, and any sound pan to C and D will only pick up effect 2. Sounds panned to C and D can still be panned back to the A and B side using pan pots 3 and 4, so that they can be directed to outputs 1 and 2, as well as still going out of outputs 3 and 4. Once again, sounds assigned to C and D would only go out of outputs 3 and 4 if pan pots 3 and 4 were turned off. Here's an application for parallel placement. Push Program and make sure that you have A09 Producer Kit showing. Press Edit and page up to 12A, Effect 2. Change from the exciter to 41 delay room. Page up to 14A and change serial to parallel. Right arrow and set pan pot 3 to 50-50 and pan pot 4 to 50-50. Now page back to 12A and look at the diagram in the book. Whenever you have a double effect like this, the first of the two is assigned to the left effects input with the second assigned to the right. This means that anything panned to input C will only go through the delay, and anything panned to input D will only go through the room reverb. What I intend to do is to pan the kick and hi-hats to D so that they pick up the room reverb, and then pan them back with pan pot 4 to the center of the mix, 50-50 between outputs 1 and 2. I also want to pan the snare to C to only pick up the delay and then pan it back to 50-50 at the center of outputs 1 and 2. Now let's go to the global section and page up to drum kit 2. Right arrow from the fat kick to panning, and set it to D for the room. Right arrow back to 7A and change the index number to 36, the closed hi-hat. Right arrow to pan it to D. Left arrow to the index number and select 38, open hi-hat. And set it to D also. Now left arrow to the index number and back it up to number 17, snare 2 on F3. Right arrow to the pan pot and send it to C for the delay. Now back to Program and then Edit. Page up to 12A and right arrow to the dry effect ratio and set it to 60/40. Page up once to the delay time and change it to 55 milliseconds. Right arrow to 13C and set the room reverb time to 0.3 seconds. Now listen to your various drums. The kick and hi-hats are fairly dry with a short room reverb. The snare has a radical sound using a delay. All the rest have a hall reverb, and we're only using 2 outputs. That's the strength in having this versatile of an effects processor. Now on to the third and final effects placement, Parallel 2. Parallel 2 is the new kid on the block. I call this one the missing link effects placement because it fills in where the others leave off. Follow along with the diagram in the middle of page 35. In Parallel 2, any sound pan to A and B will go through effect 1 and then out of outputs 1 and 2. Sounds pan to C and D will go through effect 2 but can be panned back to the A and B side in position to also be processed through effect 1 and then go out through outputs 1 and 2. For instance, in a multi-timbral setup, you could pan an organ to C plus D to pick up a rotary speaker effect on effect 2, and pan it back to left and right to still be processed through a reverb on effect 1. Everything else could be panned between A and B to just pick up the reverb. I'm getting a lot of use out of Parallel 2. Remember that effects placement is the key to getting the most out of the O3R's effects. Think of it like this. You don't assign an effect to a sound. You assign a sound to an effect. For a shortcut, copy the effects from program A09 for a quick, useful effects setup that will allow you to have some sounds wet and some sounds dry. For wet sounds, in this instance, pan the timbre between A and B. For dry sounds, pan to C, C plus D, or D. If you want to get more creative than this, the sky's the limit. Now pause the tape and mess around with some effects. Now I'm going to show you something that will excite you. You bought the O3RW because you needed a professional quality sound module at a great price. However, because of the lower cost, you forfeited some features such as a larger display and buttons and sliders to make getting around on the O3R more convenient. Let me show you a way to get those features back for a reasonable price. It's called the Korg RE1 remote editor. It has a long cord and plugs into the remote jack in the back of the O3R. Take a look at the display. It's the size of an M1's display. To the bottom left are 6 function keys. F1 is for Combi Select. F2 is Combi Edit. F3 is Program Select. F4 is Program Edit. F5 is the multi-mode. And F6 is Global. Notice that I can page through the Global and reach drum kit 1, or I could just hit number 8 on the keypad to the right. Watch as I go through the keys for Global. Tune transposition, scale type, MIDI, memory protect, MIDI dump, load from card, save to card, preset data load, drum kit 1, drum kit 2. Also, notice in the display that you see all of the parameters for each index drum sound. Let's go back to the program key and choose A09 on the keypad so that we have a drum program to listen through. Now back to Global number 9. Select index number 00 in the left side of the display by pressing the key directly beneath and moving the slider. Notice that we see the name Fat Kick in the top right of the display. As I move across the page with the bottom cursor position keys, a display cue is shown in the top right of the display telling me the name of the parameter I have highlighted with the blinking cursor. Stop on the tuning parameter, which is above the D key. It's blinking so I can change it. I can change it with the slider directly beneath. Listen. Now press F1, the combi key. Select combination A00, MIDI piano. Press F2, the combi edit key. You see all programs at once. Press the key beneath each timbre and you see its name in the top right. Page up. All output levels at once. Page up. All MIDI channel selections at once. Page up. All key window tops at once. Press keypad number 8 to see effect 1. Page up. Here are all of your effect parameters. Hopefully, I have shown you the value of the RE1. Whenever you are able, I would recommend it highly. The convenience is well worth the cost. It also works with the highly popular Korg O3R synthesis module and the A1 digital effects processor. Well, that's about it. I hope this video has been a help to you. One thing, don't let this video keep you from reading your owner's manual. With the basic understanding I hope you've gained from watching this tape, the manual should be a lot easier to understand. Also, don't forget Korg USA's excellent product support department. There are several well-trained experts waiting to assist you with your Korg products. Dial 1-516-333-USER and get direct access to Korg's Product Support Center. Thanks for watching.